I'm going to click go live, and it gives us 3 seconds on this one. So.
You just point at me.
Okay.
Okay, we on? We on? This is very professional. I am sitting here with my friend, Dr. Ben Carson. I had the privilege of meeting you, like, what was it, about a month ago? We met about a month ago?
Or a couple of months ago.
Yeah, and I actually met you because I read the second book that you wrote.
Yeah.
You're kind of a hero in my household. My wife is a medical doctor, and so I've known about you for years just through some of your medical accomplishments. So thank you so much for being here in the great state of South Carolina.
And you know, I've just been so impressed by your ministry. It's so vibrant. You know, people come in here, they're alive, and
Yes,
they're
sir.
excited. And isn't that the way it's supposed to be when the Spirit is involved?
I thought it was. I really did. I've always thought church should be fun because I think heaven's going to be fun.
Yeah.
And so I think if heaven's going to be fun, that church should just look like a little slice of it.
I actually think the good Lord has a sense of humor.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because the fact that I'm getting to do this is his sense of humor, Dr. Carson. You know, speaking of that, one of the questions that people are asking is where does Dr. Carson stand in regards to Christianity and you know, spirituality? So, just right out of the gate, are you a Christian? Are you a follower of Jesus?
I am definitely a Christian and a follower of Jesus. It's the most important thing in my life. Far more important than any position or any amount of money. And, you know, I came to a real understanding of who God was when I was 14 years old.
Really?
And I tried to stab someone. And with a large camping knife, and under their clothing they had on a large metal belt buckle. And the knife blade struck with such force that it broke. And they fled in terror, but I was more horrified than they were. Locked myself in the bathroom just thinking about the fact that I was trying to kill somebody. I had turned things around academically by that time.
Right.
But I realized that I would never, ever become a doctor with a temper like that. And I just said, Lord, I can't control this. And I tried everything. And I said, unless you take this temper away from me, my life is going to be a failure. And there was a Bible in the bathroom. I picked it up, opened it to the book of Proverbs. And all these verses in there about fools. It seemed like they were written about me.
Oh, wow.
But then there were also all these verses about anger. Like Proverbs 19:19, there's no point getting an angry man out of trouble because he's just going to get right back into it.
Right.
But encouraging verses like Proverbs 16:32, mightier is the man who can control his temper than the man who can conquer the city. And I stayed in there for 3 hours reading and contemplating and praying. And during that time, you know, God spoke to me. And to help me to realize that getting angry, punching somebody in the face, kicking down a door was not a sign of strength. It was a sign of weakness.
Wow.
It meant you could easily be manipulated by other people and by circumstances. And I also came to understand that getting angry all the time was a sign of selfishness. Because it's always about me, mine, and I. Somebody took my thing. They did this to me in my space, you know. And I said, if you can learn how to step outside of the circle and let it be about somebody else, it'll be almost impossible for you to get angry. And you know, when I came out of that bathroom after 3 hours, the anger was gone. Never had another episode since then. And I came to understand at that point that our Savior was somebody who was real. This wasn't just some nebulous figure that the preacher talked about.
Right.
It was somebody who could have a true impact on your life. And I adopted God that day not only as my Heavenly Father, but as my earthly Father.
I'm incredibly convicted right now, and I probably need to go to the bathroom and read the Bible for 3 hours because that's absolutely. First of all, you're such a calm person that you trying to stab somebody with a knife. I can't fathom that. But that's a powerful story.
And some people think that, oh, you still are like that. You just learn how to cover it up. But I'll tell you something. When God fixes a problem, He doesn't do a paint job.
Oh.
He fixes it from the inside.
Somebody needs to tweet that. Wow.
And that's been very useful for me now because, particularly now that I've entered this public arena, and you have news media and various people trying to get a rise out of you.
Yes, sir.
And I know they're not going to get it.
Yes, sir.
And it's very encouraging to me.
Well, out of all the candidates, you definitely are one of the calmest people I've ever seen in my life. Just to be able to kind of take those rapid fire questions, and you just never seem to get rattled.
Right.
And you would attribute that to that day.
Absolutely.
When you gave your life to Christ.
Some people think I'm too calm, but I'm not. I'm just laying back and taking it all in.
Well, the people that say that you're too calm also need to keep in mind that you're a neurosurgeon.
Exactly.
And I'm just going to be honest with you. I want my neurosurgeon calm.
You're right.
I don't need that guy hyped up on caffeine, right? And so,
especially you're deep in the middle of somebody's head, and a vessel breaks loose and it starts bleeding. I mean, if you panic, the patient's dead.
Yeah, I'm really glad you're calm, and I hope if I ever have to have brain surgery, even if you're elected president, that you'll kind of step out and help me out.
I'll get the right person.
Thank you so much. Hey, you're obviously a great leader. You overcome a pretty difficult childhood. You talk about your mother and the book reports and things like that, and you obviously were very successful in the medical career. But now you're interested in politics, being the president of the United States. So what was it that happened inside of you that caused you to go, I want this job because I think I can lead our country?
Well, it's a very good question. I had a very long and arduous career as a neurosurgeon.
Yes, sir.
And an incredible career. If somebody had sat me down in front of a computer, said you can type out any career you want to have, I could not have come up with a better scenario.
Really?
It was amazing what God did in my career. And after 15,000 operations,
15,000.
yes, I had decided it was time to retire. Largely because someone had told me that neurosurgeons die early. And I said, maybe I can beat the Grim Reaper here. I didn't believe it at first, so I wrote down the name of the 10 last neurosurgeons I knew who died, calculated the average age of death, and it was 61. So I just determined, I said, when I turn 61, if I'm not dead, I'm going to retire.
Yes, sir.
And, that happened in 2013.
Okay.
I was going to have a traditional retirement.
Yeah.
We bought a beautiful home in Florida on a golf course.
Okay.
And, I bought an organ because I always wanted to play the organ. I was
Really?
going to learn how to play the organ.
Okay.
All those books you save up that you're going to read when you retire,
Mm-hmm.
I had them ready to go.
Okay.
All the movies that you never saw, it was going to be great.
Yeah.
And my wife was just so happy because finally we'd be able to spend time together.
Uh-huh.
And then came the prayer breakfast in 2013.
I remember it well.
And, I was kind of flabbergasted when I was asked because I had done it in 1997.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't aware that anyone ever did it twice. And then I found out one person had done it twice, and that was Billy Graham. And I said, Lord, what are you up to?
Right.
And I knew I was supposed to say something, but I didn't know what it was until the morning of the prayer breakfast.
Really?
Which caused great consternation to the committee.
I'll bet.
Because they wanted to know what I was going to say. They wanted to say, you're not going to offend the president, are you? I said, no, I have no intention of offending the president. But they wanted to know. I said, I can't give it to you because I don't know what it is.
Can't guarantee it. Yeah.
So anyway, that morning when I woke up, I knew exactly what it was. And it obviously just resonated like crazy with people. And immediately afterwards, people started saying, you should run for president. The next day, Wall Street Journal comes out, Carson for president. And, it goes on, and people started clamoring, and I said, oh, come on, that's ridiculous. I'm a neurosurgeon. I said, this will all die now. But it didn't. Instead, it kept building up. And I kept running into particularly elderly people who told me that they had given up on America, and they were waiting to die.
Wow.
Until they heard my speech. I heard that time after time, and young people who were concerned about the future of their children, and a gazillion people saying to me, you were born for such a time as this. I just heard that everywhere. And, I started praying. I said, Lord, you know that this is not something that I want to do. I
Right.
said I had other plans.
Yeah.
And I said, all the pundits say that it's impossible for a novice like you to put together a national organization, to raise funds for a national campaign at that level. It's never been done, and you're not going to do it either. And to me, that was actually comforting to hear that.
Right.
I said, I don't have to worry about it.
Exactly.
And I said, but Lord, if you really want me to do it, you open the doors. And if you open the doors, I'll walk through it. And we put together an incredible organization. People just, all the right people just came. They were
Right.
there.
Yes, sir.
And then, in terms of finances, hundreds of thousands of donations
Right.
from ordinary people. And you see, the pundits, they forgot about the people. They didn't realize that there were actually the people out there
Right.
who were making the difference. And that's the story. So I told the Lord, as long as He opened the doors, I walk through them. And He keeps opening them, and I keep walking through them. And if He closes them, I'll sit down.
Wow. How'd your wife feel about this when you told her?
She was not happy.
Oh. Okay. But you obviously worked through that, right? I mean.
Well, when the grandchildren started coming, then she was fully on board with it.
Right.
Because she too started thinking about their future and the direction of our country, recognizing that they would have no future if we continued in this direction. And it didn't matter whether it was Democrats or Republicans doing it. Spending up their future, increasing our debt to such levels that we undermine our financial stability.
Right.
Failing to take an active role on the world stage as a leader, which of course invites other people who perhaps have not such pure motives to assume the role that we should have had. And just creating division in every aspect of our society.
Right.
All of these are things that will lead to an America that is very different from anything we knew before.
You mentioned the future, and it's real interesting because I read the news every day, as I know you do, and on every news network this morning I got up, and the top story was the plunge of the Dow Industrial. I think it dropped actually 1,000 points.
Yeah, it was almost 1,100.
Right, and so the words stable economy, those two things are an oxymoron. They do not exist. And so you have an economic plan, like you've thought about this. And so what would be your plan? What would you say that we need to do as Americans, or what would be your plan for America when it comes to the economy?
Well, there are several steps that we have to take.
Okay.
First of all, we've had this extremely prolonged recovery with a very sluggish economy. From 1850 until 2000, our economy grew at an average rate of 3.3%
Per year?
Yeah.
Okay.
From 2001 to 2014, it grew at an average rate of 1.8%. 3.3, 1.8. Now, project that over 20 years. At 1.8, you come out with a $26 trillion economy. At 3.3, a $35 trillion economy. $35 trillion. That is a lot of money, when you're talking about unfunded liabilities. So, in more recent quarters, we've actually had negative numbers. So this is not working out. And we have to ask ourselves, what can we do to rev up the economy once again? Well, there are a number of things. First of all, we have the highest corporate tax rate in the developed world.
What is that? What is that rate?
35%.
35% corporate tax rate. Okay.
Right. And that's driving business out of here. Our Secretary of Treasury said that American companies that do business overseas to avoid our higher tax rates are unpatriotic, which means he doesn't understand business. People don't go into business to support the government. They go into business to make money.
Yes, sir.
So obviously we need to lower that so we can begin to draw business in rather than to repel business. And one of the things that I would do to really jumpstart our economy is to declare a 6-month hiatus on corporate taxes for all that money overseas. We have over $2 trillion of American money overseas that's not being brought back because of that tax rate. Let them repatriate it. The only stipulation I would make is that 10% of it had to be used to create jobs. for unemployed people, people on welfare. That would be a stimulus like nothing you'd ever seen before.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't cost the taxpayers 1 penny. That's easy. And then that's step number one. The regulations. You know, the government is supposed to be here for one purpose. This is a country that's upformed by the people. The government is there to facilitate life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Instead, it has insinuated itself into every aspect of our lives,
right,
with countless regulations coming out all the time. Well, people don't realize that every single federal regulation costs money to us, we the people. And it raises the cost of goods and services. That always gets passed on to the consumer. It hurts the middle class and poor people much more than it does the rich. And you have some people on the progressive side who will sit here and tell poor people and middle class people that you're having a tough time because of the rich people.
right,
That's not why they're having a tough time.
right,
They're having a tough time because these incessant regulations are driving up the prices of
right,
everything. So that needs to be dealt with. And then we need to have a tax system that is conducive to entrepreneurial risk-taking and capital investment. We don't have that right now.
right,
We have an oppressive tax system right now. And, you know, I have made no qualms about the fact that the system that I most advocate is based on the Bible. Tithing. God said, give me a tithe. He didn't say if you have a bumper crop, give me triple tithe.
right,
He didn't say if your crops fail, you don't owe me anything.
right,
So there must be something very fair about proportionality. You make $10 billion a year, you pay $1 billion. You make $10 a year, you pay $1.
right,
You get the same rights and privileges. What could be more fair than that?
right,
You get rid of all the deductions. You get rid of all the loopholes. And now some people say, you can't do that because, you know, the guy who gave $10 billion, he's still got $9 billion left.
right,
That's not fair. We need to take more of his money.
right,
That's called socialism.
yeah,
And it never leads to a good place. The thing that really made America great and that zoomed us so quickly to the top was we took the opposite attitude. We said, that guy just put in $1 billion. We need to make the atmosphere even better so that next year he can make 20 billion
1.5 billion,
and put
yeah.
2 billion in the
Yeah.
pot. And you know, and that's why there was more for everybody, and that's how we grew, because we weren't, you know, jealous of other people and trying to take from them. And that's what we need to do once again. Also, people on the other side, they say, well, the guy who only made $10, he can't afford to pay $1. Of course he can. Can his kids go to public school? Can he drive on the public road?
right,
You know, I grew up in that lower segment of society, and I will tell you, there are a lot of people there who have pride. They don't want you to pat them on the head and say, there, you poor little thing.
right,
What they would prefer you do is fix the economy so that they can get a good job. And through their hard work, they can move up the ladder and become
Right.
part of the fabric of America. And then there are those who say, well, with no mortgage deduction, I'll lose my house. But what they don't realize is that the amount of money they're paying is so much less, they don't need a mortgage deduction.
right,
And then there are some that say, all the churches will disappear, there'll be no more charitable giving. They forgot that before 1913, when the federal income tax was imposed, churches were thriving, charities were thriving. Americans are very generous people. I have a feeling they'd be actually more generous, not less generous, if they have more money in their pocket.
yeah, yeah,
So, you know, those are the kinds of things that will really jumpstart our economy, get us growing again. Because you have to realize that this country declared its independence in 1776. In less than 100 years, it was the #1 economic power in the world. I mean, think about that.
That's strong.
That is incredible.
yes, sir,
But it was because we created the right atmosphere, and that's what we must do again, and stop listening to the socialist progressives who want a utopia, and they think that that's like Shangri-La, Nobody has to worry about anything from cradle to grave.
Right.
The government will take care of all of your needs.
Yeah.
The problem is all those societies end up looking exactly the same.
Yeah.
A small group of elites at the top controlling everything, a rapidly vanishing middle class, and a vastly expanded dependent class. And that's exactly the direction that we're heading, and we have to stop it.
I told somebody yesterday, I was in a conversation, I said, people will say socialism doesn't work, socialism doesn't work. And I said, actually, I found a place that does work in works of fiction. And that's the only place I found that it works. Yeah. So it sounds to me like you've obviously given some thought to the economy. One of the things that people are saying about you, and this is not brand new news, you've heard this a million times, is, well, Dr. Carson's smart, he's a neurosurgeon, he's obviously a great leader, he's got some great thoughts, but we're really concerned about his lack of experience in politics, and we're not sure. I mean, this is the President of the United States. So how do you answer that? Dr. Carson, we're concerned about your lack of experience. What do you say?
I say, first of all, you can get experience from a number of places. Mm-hmm. It is a false narrative that the only place you can get experience is in political office. I've had a very rich experience in medicine, mm-hmm. but a lot of people don't know this. I also served for 18 years on the board of Kellogg Company. Okay. I also served for 16 years on the board of Costco. Okay. I was also chairman of the board of Vaccinogen, a biotech company. Okay. Started a national nonprofit. I seriously doubt there's anybody else running who's had that much business experience in doing things. And, our nonprofit not only became successful in all 50 states, but won major national awards. That's a very rare thing. Yes. So, experience can come from a lot of things. The thing that's really, I think, most important is, do you have experience solving complex problems? Do you have experience putting together teams that can work together synergistically to be able to accomplish things? I would take that person over somebody who's been sitting around pushing papers any day of the week.
One of the major things in the news today is, of course, the deal with Iran, mm-hmm. and it's on the table, and it's got a lot of Americans nervous. And then the news came out about the back deal, and there's all kind of intricacies. So, with that in mind, the two or three biggest issues that you see in regards to foreign policy are blank, and then what's your plan for us to jump in there and fix that? Because our foreign policy's messed up.
Well, the biggest problem is that we don't lead. We just react. We react to what other people do, and that, of course, puts us behind the 8 ball. When it comes to something like the Iranian deal, we settle for something rather than setting the agenda. If I were making a deal like that, I wouldn't even sit down at the table unless, first of all, they released our 4 hostages.
Thank you.
I said, that's number one. You don't do that, we don't even talk, okay? And then you have to have anywhere, anytime inspections. No exception to that. Because the only reason you would want an exception to that is if you were planning on cheating, right? So if they're not going to do that, why would you have an agreement with them? You have to have accountability, you have to have the ability to verify, and you have to have enforcement. Those are the basic ingredients of that kind of international agreement. That's negotiation 101. They got none of that stuff.
Right.
Okay. So, that obviously, we didn't disassemble any of their nuclear infrastructure. They're on a pathway to be able to get intercontinental ballistic missiles,
which allows them to strike America.
Strike us. And we've really done nothing to tap them down. The inspection process, 24 days at the earliest. They can do a lot in 24 days to clean things up. It just makes no sense what we're doing. In some of the areas, they still have off limits to us. It's probably the worst deal in the history of America.
Right.
So that's ridiculous. In terms of being able to look at the global picture, ask yourself, where are the real threats to us coming from? Vladimir Putin, I think, is a huge threat to us. He's very adventurous and has expansionist ideals. He invaded, Georgia in 2008. He's still there. He hasn't come out of there.
Right.
And then invaded Crimea in 2013, and then eastern Ukraine. And, the only thing that really is keeping him from expanding further is the fact that energy prices have decreased so much. And he's, a one-horse show. Energy, that's where the stuff comes from. So, in a way, we're very lucky. We've had a reprieve right there. It's almost like God is saying, I'm trying to give you guys a chance.
Right.
The same thing with China. We were the #1 economy in the world, from the 1870s until last year, when China became the #1 economy.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the #1 economy usually has the privilege of being the reserve currency of the world, which we still are, even though we're not the #1 economy. But we may not always have that privilege. China would like that privilege. They deserve it. But their economic system is not able to tolerate it right now, fortunately for us.
Right.
Again, we got a reprieve. A reprieve from Russia, a reprieve from China. It's almost like God saying, come on, you guys. Just use your brain a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Put your brain in gear and get moving again. The reason that China is being more adventurous in the South China Sea, again, we're not showing any leadership in that area of the world. There is nowhere that we're showing leadership. We're rejecting our friends, our close friends like Israel. We've turned our back on them. I was in Israel, last December. I couldn't find a single person who didn't think we had turned our back on them.
Right.
When you go to Ukraine, they gave up their nuclear weapons. There was an understanding that if they were attacked or invaded, that we would protect them. They were attacked and invaded. Did we protect them? No. We won't even give them offensive weapons.
Right.
I think the rest of the world looks at this. And our friends question whether they are our friends. And our enemies question our resolve. All of these things make war more likely, not less likely.
What's your thoughts on ISIS and the obvious? I mean, you said you went to Israel. I love Israel. I'm a big supporter of Israel, but they're surrounded by this.
People want to destroy them.
Yeah, and clearly ISIS is a problem. What would be your plan to deal with ISIS?
Very good question. A lot of Americans, think back to 2003 when we invaded Iraq and, we lost a lot of lives and a tremendous amount of money. And they say, we don't want to do that again.
Right.
We have to learn from our experiences. That, unfortunately, is very short-sighted because what is going on now is very different than what was going on then. Now we have the radical jihadists globally who want to destroy us and our way of life. Very different situation than Saddam.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And we, first of all, need leadership that understands that.
Yes, sir.
And that is willing to call, the enemy by its name, and then begin a strategy that makes sense. They're growing. They're recruiting people from all over the place because it looks like they're victorious. They are creating their caliphate. They've taken half of Iraq and a third of Syria. They've now got a foothold in Tunisia. They're taking territory in Nigeria. And all of these global jihadists have a goal of destroying us and our way of life. So we need to do one of two things. Sit there and act like they're not a big deal.
Right.
And maybe drop a few bombs in the desert here and there and just say, we're doing something.
Right.
Or we can use every resource available to us, including economic resources, military resources, overt and covert resources, to destroy them first. I really believe that is the appropriate course of action. And, one of the ways you stop all their recruiting, you take the land. All of that land that they've acquired, you take it back from them. I guarantee you, and because I've talked to many of our generals, if they were given the mission of taking that land back and given the resources, they could do it almost immediately.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. No problem whatsoever. And not only take the land, take the resources on the land. You know, Anbar there in Iraq, that's one of the richest energy fields in the world.
Right.
And whose control is it under? It's under the control of ISIS.
Right.
Take that from them.
Right.
Deprive them of their source of income. Make them look like losers. Make them get desperate because, you know, they see us taking that, and then they amass their forces, and we use our satellites and we use our covert intelligence to find out where they're amassing, and we wipe them out. That's the way you do stuff.
Yeah. Hey, man, I'm in. That's brilliant. Because you're right. I haven't thought about that. Every time you read about ISIS, it's about how they're winning,
Right.
and even Americans are going over. Yeah.
No question.
So your specialty, your background is medicine, and so I am like, there's 100% confidence in me that you probably have some strong opinions about the health care in America, and you probably have some pretty strong ideas on how to fix a pretty broken system. So talk to me about that.
Well, you know, first of all, you know, I've been criticized because I criticize Obamacare.
Right.
I don't like it. I'll tell you right off the bat.
Why don't you like it? What is it?
Well, it's not so much because it doesn't work and because it's not affordable. It's because it represents a fundamental change in America.
Okay, explain that one.
This is a country that was designed of, for, and by the people. The government was only there to facilitate things for the people.
Right.
With Obamacare, the government comes along and says, this is what we're doing, and we're shoving it down your throat, and we don't care what you think. And that's just the way it is. Fundamentally changes the relationship between the people and the government. The people are supposed to be at the pinnacle, and the government is supposed to be there to serve the people. If we accept a situation where the government turns that on its head and instead says, we dictate, you obey, that's not America anymore.
Right.
That's the reason that I hated it so much. It's not because I don't want people to have good health care, but I never complain about something without having an alternative. And the alternative that I would favor is health savings accounts. They work extremely well. And it's a kind of health savings account that would be very much like your own personal savings account. You would have control of it, but can only use it for health care reasons. And you make it available to people from birth till death, pay for it with the very same dollars that we pay for traditional health care with. And we give people the ability to shift money in their HSA within their family. So if you were, you know, needing an extra $500, you could get it from your wife or your cousin, your uncle, your grandfather.
Which means me and my wife need to continue to be close, because
That
if
would
it's
help.
$500 to save my wife, man, she might cut me.
That's right. That's exactly. But think about the flexibility.
No,
it makes every family their own insurance company with no middleman, and it also makes you care about your family. Now you care more about Uncle Joe who's smoking like a chimney.
Right.
Everybody's going to be hiding his cigarettes and saying,
Right.
Joe, stop that.
Right.
You know, because it could potentially affect all of us.
Yeah. I really do have an Uncle Joe that smokes cigarettes.
Do you?
That really, I legitimately, and he smokes like a chimney.
All right, well, we got to get him on the HSA.
We got to do it.
Okay, and then, but it also decreases the cost of your catastrophic health care tremendously, because now the only thing that's coming out of that is catastrophic health care. So it's sort of like a homeowner's policy with a big deductible, which is a very different animal than a homeowner's policy where you want everything covered. So it drives the price down tremendously, and then you make it possible to buy that catastrophic health care across state lines, drives it down even further. It becomes eminently affordable for about 75% of the people.
Right.
Not so much for the indigent. So what do you do for them? Well, how do we pay for them right now? Medicaid. What's the annual Medicaid budget? $400 to $500 billion a year. How many people participate? About a quarter of the population, 80 million people, which is way more than it should be. But that comes back to us getting people working again. But right now, let's deal with it as it is now. 80 million into 400 billion goes 5,000 times. $5,000 every man, woman, and child on Medicaid. What could you buy with that? Concierge practice, boutique practice, $2,000 to $3,000 a year. We can put them all in the boutique practice and still have thousands left over to buy catastrophic insurance, which is much cheaper now. And I'm not suggesting that we actually do that. I'm saying that that's how much money there is already set aside. And if we used it in a way that we fashion a health savings account for such individuals, look at the advantage. First of all, they're not second-class citizens anymore. Everybody is worth the same.
Yes, sir.
When you go in to get care. So, a lot of the discrepancies are going to disappear. But also, people in Washington would say, you can't give poor people a health savings account because they're too stupid and they won't know how to use it. That's what they said about food stamps. They said they go out and buy a porterhouse steak the first 5 days and be in the corner the sixth day begging. It didn't happen.
Right.
They learn how to use it. And they would learn how to use the health savings account. Mr. Jones, who gets that diabetic foot ulcer, will learn very quickly not to go to the emergency room where it costs 5 times more to get patched up.
Because he's paying for it.
As he's paying for it. He's going to go to the clinic. Gets the same treatment, but instead of sending him out, they say, Mr. Jones, let's get your diabetes under control so you're not back here in 3 weeks with another problem.
Right.
A whole nother level of savings, which we are not realizing. Plus, we're teaching Mr. Jones to think about his own health care and learn how to be responsible as opposed to being dependent. And anything that is orchestrated in any way by our government should be teaching people independence and not dependence.
Obviously, coming back to your medical background, what's your thoughts on abortion?
Well, I obviously don't like killing babies. My whole medical career was around saving people. I even operated on babies in the womb.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. Spent all night sometimes operating on little babies trying to save their lives. And I tell you, one of the most gratifying things, even now that I've retired, I sometimes run into them.
Really?
And wonderful people. One of the babies that I operated in the mother's womb, my wife Candy was telling me she was at a banquet and she came up to her and she said, "Wow, this beautiful young blonde woman came up to her and said, I was one of those babies your husband operated on in the mother's womb."
So you operated on babies in the mother's womb?
Yes.
So that's a life.
That is a life, and that's my feeling. It is a life, and it begins at conception, and we should do everything we can to save it. And now that the equipment has been invented that can show us that little baby.
Yes.
And we can see even at 8 weeks, the little earbuds and little eye sockets and
yes.
things. And, how can you say that that's not a human being?
Right.
And the heart's already starting to beat. So we should be looking at everything we can do to preserve and save those lives. We should be making sure that we give mothers options, but even more importantly, we should begin to teach once again young women that they are valuable.
Yes.
They have self-worth.
Agree,
and don't
100%.
just give yourself to the first guy who comes along and impregnates you and then leaves you in the lurch. These are values that we used to have in this country.
Right.
And now it's not even politically correct to talk about that.
You can't talk about purity. Nobody talks about purity except when we're talking. I heard a guy say this today. We don't only talk about purity when we talk about water.
Exactly.
It has nothing to do. So, taking that step further in regards to hot topics in American culture today, the Supreme Court recently passed the legislation on marriage. Yeah. So everybody watching obviously knows what I'm talking about. So, what's your thoughts on marriage? How do you define marriage?
I define marriage as a union between one man and one woman, and it's a religious union.
Yes, sir.
It is an institution that was created by God. And, it is a pillar of society, a foundational pillar. And when you begin to change the definition of foundational pillars, where do you stop? You say, well, we're just going to change it this time. But the next group that comes along, we're not changing it for them? That doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And, what the Supreme Court did, I do not believe was appropriate, because the court is supposed to interpret law, not create law. And that is the purpose of the legislative branch. Now, the remedy is going to have to come from the legislative branch, because what has happened as a result of the Supreme Court's ruling is that people are losing their businesses, losing their jobs, and losing their religious freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to take the legislative branch to correct that. But they have to do it. They can't just continue to sit around and act like the peanut gallery. Now, they're doing that because I don't believe they have strong leadership.
Right.
And it's going to require an executive who is brave and who can provide the kind of leadership, because I think we've sent the right people to Congress over the last few elections. They're just lacking in terms of the leadership.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because bravery. So as soon as you say you believe marriage is between a man and a woman, one of the things that people might possibly say is, well, Dr. Carson, you're a hater. You hate.
And they have said that.
Okay, so how do you respond to that when they tell you, well, you hate gay people, you hate people that are gay? How do you respond?
I respond by saying, answer this question for me. What position can a person take who has nothing against gay people, who believes in the traditional definition of marriage that is acceptable to you? And they can never answer that question. Because, as far as they're concerned, it's my way or the highway.
Right.
There's no in between, which shows them to be completely intolerant.
Yeah. So, looking at the polls right now, you did very well in the debate, and and I think at every poll that I've looked at, and I even looked at some today, Donald Trump leads, and you're second. Two non-politicians are in the lead for the Republican vote. And so if somebody's watching right now and they're like, well, because Trump's very popular,
Yeah.
why should somebody vote for you rather than vote for Donald?
Well, I think that's a decision that only they can make, but they should listen very carefully to what we're saying. They should listen very carefully to the plans that we have. They should understand where we're coming from, what motivates us, and on the basis of that, they should make their decision. I wouldn't tell them that they have to vote for me. I would say, but make sure you're well informed before you make a decision.
Right. So you've obviously met Donald Trump. Do you guys? You guys
we
get
get along
along?
well. Yeah, absolutely.
Would you have him over to dinner sometime, maybe?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. I want to respect your time, but just a couple more questions. Just fun questions. What's your favorite movie of all time?
Interestingly enough, it would be True Lies.
Really? With a Governor in it?
Yeah. That was the funniest movie.
Really?
Oh my God.
Okay.
I love the tango that they were doing, and the horse riding into the elevator. I mean, there were just so many cool scenes in there.
Okay. What's your favorite book that you read just for fun?
Just for fun. Well, my favorite book is a book of Proverbs, which is written by Solomon.
Right.
But you're going to be surprised with my answer. For fun, it was a book called Rules for Radicals.
Really?
By Saul Alinsky.
Okay.
Because it shows you and it outlines the entire agenda of the left wing, of the progressive agenda for fundamentally changing America. And with each page you turn, you recognize some of the things that are going on today.
Favorite kind of music?
Classical music.
Classical.
Particularly Baroque music.
Okay. Favorite food?
Vegetarian chili.
Vegetarian chili.
Vegetarian.
I didn't know you could have that. What is it? Is it just beans?
No, it's regular chili, but you put the soy meat substitute in, which tastes very much like. You probably couldn't tell the difference.
Okay.
Between that and beef, if you get the griller's prime, and you basically chop it up, and you can actually buy it chopped up already for lasagna and chili and things like that.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Great, man. What are the top apps that you use on your phone? What are the things you go to a lot?
I go to the calendar app.
Yes.
That's probably the biggest one. I use my Bible app a lot, particularly when I'm in a hotel and there's no Bible there. I just pull out my Bible
the
app.
Gideons used to put those everywhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They should get a Gideon app. Just
right.
And I also use my what's that thing called? The one where you go and find all the inner workings of the phone. That has the little wheel on it.
I know what you're talking about, but I don't know. I use it too.
Settings.
Yes. Yes. I don't even know. I don't know how to use my phone really. God help us all. But yeah. So the fact that you carry an iPhone just took my respect for you to a brand new level. It's amazing. Hey, let me ask this question because I want to shut it down. Once again, I want to be respectful of your time. But is there anything that we did not talk about in regards to your position on our views or whatever? Is there anything that we did not say or mention that you would like to say in closing?
Yeah, what I would say in closing is that, America is a wonderful place. And people like to down talk us, but the fact of the matter is, you see people trying to get in here, not people trying to get out. And, we need to be proud of the nation that we live in. And we have to stop allowing the purveyors of hatred and division to divide us up, to make us believe that there's a war on women, that there's racial wars, that there's income wars, that there's age wars, that there's religious wars, driving wedges in every place that they possibly can.
Yes, sir.
They are not our friends. They are our enemies. We are not each other's enemies. And the sooner we recognize that, the much higher we go as a nation.
Sounds like you're pretty big on the unity thing.
Absolutely.
Well,
that's what we're called the
United States of America. There you go. Well, people want to know more information about you, your views, what you're standing for, your campaign. If people are just interested in that, what website do they go to?
It's an easy one. BenCarson.com.
Even I could remember that. All right. Last but not least, Dr. Carson, I've enjoyed our time. Can we end our time together with a fist bump?
Absolutely.
Bam. Thank you so much for joining in. God bless. And this is Dr. Ben Carson.